This latest chapter of our Surviving Diddy series is definitely going to be sundown in Diddy Town. My mind sometimes. All right, you white motherfuckers, all eyes on me. This is the I Refuse podcast. This is Miss Fox, the I Refuse podcast. It is hump day. The middle of the week. Man, this close to the weekend, minding my African-American business. I know my frequency of videos have kind of slowed down a little bit, but things have been kind of dry. There wasn't really enough to discuss, and really not that important. I mean, Susan Smith is up for parole. For those of you that are not aware, Susan Smith was that white lady in South Carolina back in the late 90s who she ran her car into the lake with her two kids in the back seat, but tried to blame it on a black man. She's up for parole. What else happened? Master P was all up in Patti LaBelle's business now that she has expanded her empire from pies to Waffle House mix, pancakes, waffles, and I think even a cornbread of some kind. Said that the lady only has 10% stake in the Walmart relationship, which I found odd, considering the source. Master P is somebody who I wouldn't necessarily take entrepreneurship advice from. While he may have outrightly owned No Limit Records back in the day, that man put out a lot of albums through No Limit Records, whether it was him or his brothers or, artists he had signed to the label, whose shelf life never went beyond the 2000s. Whereas a 10% stake in a product that's in Walmart has a long shelf life. If you ever need an example as to why you don't need to respect everybody's opinion, there it is. So it's almost been a couple days without nonsense, but I felt like I had to get up on here and talk about another chapter in Surviving Diddy. So, if you're new to the YouTube channel, I'm Mr. Fox. This is another video in the series over here called Surviving Diddy that started off in November. The YouTube I Refuse podcast in general has been around for about 4 years now. The YouTube channel I revitalized a couple years ago. This is the first long-running series on the channel I've had since starting the YouTube. Because it's like this, you have never seen a production play out like this. Where you've known and heard things, and there's a raid, there is Department of Homeland Security, like government presence in broad daylight, which everybody took note because, you hear things and you read, oh, people are filing suits against this guy. But when you hear the words Department of Homeland Security, not too far after hearing the word sex trafficking, you're like, oh, they mean business. And whether you're here on the YouTube channel or you're on the podcast side, where we are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and 6 other streaming platforms, across the I Refuse podcast, the usual suspects, and this channel, the last 7 or 8 months, we've been talking about this. And I've said here and there, when is this actually going to gain significant traction? Like, when is this going to go from people filing left and right, Tyrone Blackburn facing Rule 11 violations, which I felt, in my opinion, was going to hurt the credibility or the longevity of the suits. I've broken down the difference between civil suits and criminal suits a couple times. I've had theories as to who's really behind CNN getting that video from the 2016 incident between Diddy and Cassie. I've talked about it all, right? And the question still lingers: when are we finally going to see a platform or whatever that says, oh, he's definitely going to be facing the music? A couple weeks ago, it was kind of quiet for a little bit. He was still on IG posting cryptic things, but also not looking stressed with his daughters while, the houses were being raided. Still keeping that public-facing image of a man that is about family and positivity. And this is before that dry-ass apology video. Then at some point, there was, I want to say, a videographic, cinematic, dramatic ass video clip where he's praying on the beach. He's in a prayer circle with people at some house. And all throughout the video is TD Jake delivering prayer. Did he probably pick that from something TD Jakes was saying to a congregation somewhere and applied it to this video where he's praying and stuff. That was very important because we looked at it like, the walls are closing in. Now you want to look to God to deliver you from evil, or deliver you from Eve and temptation and false accusations and, this dark storm that people brought to your your front door. And we're just going to pray. It's going to be so dramatic. It's going to look so deep. We're like, this nigga know he going to jail. Like, this was after he sold Revolt. This is after, associations with major corporations were falling left and right. This was after, a lot of things where it was just like, this man is really looking at this as a war. And this is just, how people like to conveniently get religious and spiritual, and, if you are the man in Bali, into, yoga and peace, trying to push this positivity thing and being centered, and as a means to deflect. This was no different. So there I was like, okay, when is this actually going to come to a head? Well, here we are, folks. May the 29th. Accusers and witnesses are being brought in before a grand jury in New York City, state of New York, could be Rochester, upstate, or whatever, to hear their testimonies, their experiences with Diddy. Now, while it does not name, because they can't name who is showing up or all this other stuff. When you get to a point where the words grand jury are in the sentences, in the paragraphs, this is what we're talking about. Now, jury, they are at a point right now where, now this is just out of New York. Now, if you went to my previous video about April Campos, heirs to intern fish filing recently, we talked about how, I almost lost my train of thought. We talked about not only the difference between criminal and civil suits, but the path and how a civil suit, a person is filing for victimization, and how that doesn't necessarily have bearing on a criminal case or a criminal suit. That's up to each individual state to file that if they have, beyond a reasonable doubt, enough evidence that a person or peoples have been victimized in that state. Now, given that New York just had the Survivors Act, and we talked about that too on the YouTube channel, there's also another act that statute of limitations does not apply, and it has currently no expiration date on it, that April Campos filed her lawsuit under. That was also out of New York. So where we're at right now, I'm led to believe that New York City, or the state of New York, is headed up to here with the Didster. They've headed up to here with the Didster. They're over the nonsense. They're like, look, we have been investigating this guy. And I've said this too. I'm like, once they got Department of Homeland Security on your ass doing raids in broad daylight, that tells me they've been investigating you for a long time. And it could be anywhere from 6 months leading up to the raid to years upon years. Like, there is no limitation as to how long they can investigate you before they pull the trigger, per se, and start making shit happen. You know, I would always give my roses and my crown, the crown, to Cassie for setting this off. Because all was quiet prior to November of last year. But now that we have, at this point, April Campos filed her lawsuit, even though she attained Tyrone Blackburn to do it. We talked about him too. And she even claims to have, they said that she has like physical evidence. Like, she really pulled a Monica Lewinsky, even though it was 30-something years ago. It's clear that New York is sick of Diddy. They are bringing people in before a grand jury to talk about this. This is very important because I think the last time they did this, was with Cosby. And there's no getting around that. There's no getting around that. And even then, people had their theories. Oh, he was on his way to buy a network. I'm like, look, no network, especially a white owned network, is going to seize it for a black man to buy it. But that's for another day. This is what, you know, how New York is running with the victims before the grand jury on Diddy. This is definitely going to be the trial of the century because this man's history of existing and being able to move in a way for so many years without recourse before social like goes long before social media was a thing, and how that force empower people to be in your business and push out certain things. And for me, being of a particular age, you know, Puffy, P. Diddy, Love has been part of, by way of his music and productions, a bad boy, part of my life for about 30 years. And all that has transpired the last 6 or 7 months has led a lot of us, particularly me, to revisit certain moments that tie back to Diddy. You know, the nightclub shooting that Shine took the hit for, dating J Lo, of course, Biggie and Tupac's murders. And it makes you wonder, you know, when you have somebody that clearly exemplifies and displays, there is no measure and length this person will not go to maintain some control or some power over people. Women, rappers, artists, dancers. There is a certain level of like overcompensation for a lack of raw talent. Um, when the switch comes on and the person, there's this other side. And we've talked about the moments we've seen as a consumer, as a viewer of the reality shows of Making the Band, where this dude will just like really switch, particularly on a female. Um, Particularly when they are working with somebody that does this particular thing that they've been retained to make happen, that's studied under actual dancers. Y'all know who I'm talking about. It's like you gotta maintain a sense of professionalism and respect for the art form, and with that, people of considerable impact. Like, we didn't study and dance at the school of the New York City subway. We've studied and danced with Debbie Allen, Alvin Ailey. Like, I taught the Fly Girls on Living Color. Like, I was one of the Fly Girls, danced alongside Janet Jackson. And this particular dancer let him have it on camera. And there's another thing to that where this particular person, Diddy, doesn't like to be challenged or questioned. And once that happens, things get physical and things get more violent. We've seen it. And the red flags have been there for years. So here we are. Looks like we're about to finally see some traction, a court case, a conviction, some sentencing, some real jail time. And Jesus is up there like, I don't want any parts of this. So they haven't testified yet, or they have not yet been prepped for testimony. The Homeland Security Investigations Agency still in the process of gathering evidence, questioning potential sources of information into their federal probe. And I'm like, just because they did the raid doesn't mean they're finished. That's the other thing. Like, the federal government doesn't take any days off. Of course, they're taking their time to ensure an indictment. You know, grand juries consist of people that look like you and me, working 9 to 5, maybe retired, used by prosecutors to provide an investigative function in proving the subpoena of documents and witnesses, and to vote on whether to criminally charge suspects. Due process. The use of the grand jury signals a particular case has moved beyond the preliminary stage, where investigators generally assess whether possible violations of the law are believed to have been committed. So we're still in the beginning stages of this. And from my recollection, I've never known a case or a part of this to get to this stage and then nothing happens. So you've heard it here that we might get a trial by fall. The feds have already interviewed multiple accusers of Diddy, the Didster. There are so many allegations, and he has not responded to them. But he knows they're there. Of course, you know the investigation stems from many of sexual assault allegations put in several civil lawsuits. At the current moment, federal investigators are now digging deep, and some of the accusers have been questioned numerous times, actively cooperating with investigators with some handing over evidence they believe may be helpful in the probe. Investigators are also bringing in new individuals for questioning, including cooperating witnesses of accusers. Federal agents are in the possession of video taken inside of Combs' recently searched residences. It's unclear whether the video was seized during the raids or whether investigators obtained video from individuals they have been questioning. They're contacting people that they found on the tapes. At least one male sex worker who claims he was victimized by Combs has been questioned during the investigation, one source says, adding that his individuals was seen in footage that is in possession of the federal investigators. In some of the lawsuits against Combs, accusers have alleged that they were informed after the fact that they were recorded having sex without giving their consent to be filmed. Spicy, dicey. In some of the civil suits, Combs is alleged of drugging multiple accusers. The two most recent lawsuits filed against him, former fashion student April Lampros, I keep calling it Campros, sorry, and former model Crystal McKinney, both accused Combs of drugging them. In Lampros' suit, she claims that Combs forced her to take ecstasy and then demands she have sexual intercourse with one of his former girlfriends before raping her. Holmes was also accused in a civil suit filed last November of intentionally drugging and sexually assaulting Joy Dickerson Neal back in 1991 when she was a college student. All this is alleged, as I'm talking about to y'all. Though his legal team has filed a motion to dismiss portions of this suit, Dickerson Neal also has accused Combs of revenge porn, claiming that Combs secretly recorded the sexual assault. Days later, a male friend revealed to Dickerson Neal that he had viewed it, according to her claim. Man, listen. I don't know which video or which episode I said it, but or maybe Abstract said it on the Usual Suspects podcast, that it's long been said, word on the curb, that throughout the California property, there were surveillance cameras in these rooms where Combs would allegedly videotape well-known people either during the freak-offs that they call them, married, down low, whatever, doing things, and that Combs would allegedly use the evidence as blackmail. That's what the word on the curb is, allegedly. And Abstract even said to my position that Cassie gave CNN that video footage from 2016, that possibly could have come from the Department of Homeland Security raid. Yo, this is playing like an Apple Plus TV show, and I'm here for it. It is not. When we talk about justice and we talk about how it goes from allegations to truth and victimization to criminal, this needs to happen more often. Like, there's no expiration date on this kind of shit, and there shouldn't be. And my obligation as the creator of the I Refuse podcast and this YouTube channel is to come out here and discuss with y'all. Discuss with y'all these kind of things and how important it is that more lies and more truths be exposed. You know, Cat Williams told us back in January this will be the year that things will be exposed. And it doesn't matter if you are Arista intern fish or you are Def Jam executive fish, even if you are former model fish, even if you're like housekeeping at Manhattan Hotel fish and powerful executives make their moves or assault you, or French diplomats make their moves and assault you, and we see time and time again that what having money will get you. 9 times out of 10 will get you acquitted, lead to a mistrial, keeps you from serving time, keeps the world from seeing any real justice. It's a new day, and I hope this will be the case, the moment in culture that breaks the ceiling. Like, you just can't be walking around here drugging people. Whether it was the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, whether it was everybody else doing it, in your position, even in people not in your position, you can't just be going around doing people any kind of way. But as more stuff comes out, I'll be back. I'll be back, and y'all keep it locked here. And until then, check out all the other content the I Refuse podcast, The Usual Suspects, has been putting out and has out across all platforms. I'm Mr. Fox of the I Refuse podcast. This has been another chapter, chapter 10 of Surviving Diddy. And I'm sure there'll be more chapters because we're locked in. We're locked in over here. Fascinated, intrigued, disgusted. Just pew. Just pew. Just pew. And this shit allegedly has trickled on down to the kids. I believe the niggas are our downfall. Teach them less and they'll do just the same. You know what? We done went from No Child Left Behind to Children Left Behind. Children are not reading. Children were supposed to be our future. Now they are just, following after they trifling ass daddy. I can't wait for 50 Cent's Netflix documentary on Diddy to drop. We don't have a date on that yet. Me and Abstract will make that a party, a viewing party, and we're going to do episodes about that. That it's going to be so great, and I hope they live stream the trial. I really want them to stream that. This is Miss Fox, the I Refuse podcast. Sorry about those last couple minutes. I just had to sing a little ditty. Oh shit. No. No. See, damn it. This is I Refuse podcast. This has been another chapter of Surviving Diddy. There will be more on the horizon. In the meantime, follow, subscribe, the I Refuse podcast, our Twitter at I Refuse podcast, all one word, the Instagram at I Refuse podcast, _ between the words. If you missed it, the information is at the beginning of the video over here. And get into the I Refuse podcast wherever you see and get your podcast. Keep those follows and the subscriptions coming, because you know the content's always going to come. Going to come there. And we will catch you guys later. Peace. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse